Chapter 1. All Glory, Laud, and Honor. Easter music was being written more than 1,000 years ago. Even in the early church, monks composed scripturally based songs for use during the 40 days of Lent and the Easter weekend. Though few of these early efforts have survived, there can be little doubt the ancient praise anthems offered great inspiration to the worshippers of their day. Written around 820, All Glory, Laud, and Honor is probably the oldest Easter hymn still commonly sung by Christians. Because of its uplifting music and positive message, most of us don't know that this song of praise and hope was composed in a dark prison cell by a man who knew he would never emerge from within its walls. Our still knowing and singing this hymn today is due to the tireless study of this isolated man, a person deemed unfit for public service by the leaders of his church. So the story behind this magnificent hymn is a testament to God's ability to bring people of faith together and to use these people in a mighty fashion no matter how isolated they are. Though separated by 1,000 years, two men, intimately connected by their unswerving devotion to their Lord, paved the way for the world's most powerful Palm Sunday anthem. If ever a man listened to Christ's directives and took them to heart, it was Theodulf of Orleans. Born in 760 in Italy, Theodulf was of royal blood. As a child, he enjoyed wealth and protection not afforded to most people during those times. Theodulf also had the benefits of education and a staff of servants at his beck and call. In today's language, he had it made. Yet despite living in a world that demanded nothing of him, Theodulf heard a call stronger than the lure of luxury and power. After reading Jesus' challenge to the rich young man, Theodulf gave up his money, property, and title and surrendered his life to the Lord's service. Overnight, the former nobleman joined the ranks of the commoner as a priest. In this capacity he sought out the poorest of the poor, feeding them while he shared the story of Christ's birth, life, death, and resurrection. His devotion to the least of these made him incredibly popular with the region's people, and an enigma to the royals whose lifestyle he had once shared. Yet just as these men and women of privilege did not forget Theodulf, he did not forget them. In fact, he constantly looked to them for the funding needed to provide for those in dire circumstances. As he continued his mission in God's service, Theodulf migrated to a monastery in Florence, Italy. The 21-year-old priest's passion for living out Christ's directives toward the poor caught the eye of one of the world's most powerful men. Charlemagne ordered Theodulf to come to his castle. After their meeting, the ruler appointed the priest as the Bishop of Orleans and moved him to France. Though again affiliated with the ruling class, Theodulf still devoted most of his time to the sick, the orphans, the poor, and the lost. For the next 37 years, Theodulf was the bridge between the royal family and the country's poor. Because of Theodulf's influence, Charlemagne took an interest in not just feeding the people of his kingdom, but educating them. Under Theodulf's guidance, priests across France set up schools devoted to teaching the children of poor families. For the first time, common people enjoyed a privilege once reserved for only the elite. Such was his status that Theodulf had only to ask, and the financing for God's work was set in motion. Yet when Charlemagne died, Theodulf, who had so closely followed the steps of Christ, found his life suddenly mirroring that of Paul. France's new ruler, Louis the Pious, was intimidated by Theodulf's power. He felt the bishop's popularity and influence might challenge his own authority, so he charged Theodulf with treason and ordered him to spend the remainder of his days in prison. The bishop was now in his late 50s, unable to reach out to the poor he so deeply loved. He turned to those who had also lost their freedom. They became his flock. As he shared the gospel with these men, a fact became clear in his mind. The king who had imprisoned him was nothing more than a figurehead. The only real king was the one he had served since the day he had given up his title and possessions. Power was therefore not in the royal castle, but in the hearts of all who believed in Christ as King. So he reasoned, even in prison, he was still a powerful man. In his cell, Theodulf picked up a quill and wrote his revelation in verse form. It would not only be his greatest message, but also his most lasting. He taught his new song to those around him. From behind the walls, he and those who worshipped with him sang out all glory, laud, and honor with such strength and passion, even the king was able to hear it. Less than a year after writing his beautiful tribute to Christ, the bishop died. Most historians believe Louis the Pious sensed he could not quench the people's love and devotion for Theodulf by simply incarcerating him, so the only option left was to kill him. Though the good bishop was surely poisoned, all glory, laud, and honor did not die with him. The hymn survived in his writings and was passed on to churches across Europe. Thus, even though the messenger was silenced, his message was not. John Mason Neale was born in London, England, almost 1,000 years after Theodulf died. The son of an Anglican priest, Neale studied at Trinity College, where he was recognized as one of the greatest writers in the distinguished school's history. After his graduation, Neale continued his education at Downing College. Then he entered the clergy. Church leaders felt the young man was indeed brilliant, but they feared his theology was far too similar to the Catholic Church's theology for him to be trusted with a parish, so Neale was appointed the warden of a home for old men in East Grinstead. In this seemingly dead-end position, Neale established dynamic missions for orphans and prostitutes, made vast contributions to church music, and published works that greatly influenced worship in the Anglican Church. Though he worked tirelessly to fulfill his mission duties, Neale also found time each day to study medieval church history and liturgy. Much of what Neale uncovered had been lost for hundreds of years. When he found writings that could speak to the modern church, he translated the documents into English. As he discovered sermons and writings, he also found and brought back to life such ancient songs as Come, O Come Emmanuel, and Good Christian Men Rejoice. One afternoon in 1851, while plowing through another dusty volume of church history, Neale came across a song written by Theodulf of Orleans. He studied the words for some time, feeling their rhythm and pacing in the original Latin before picking up a pencil and writing an English translation. Dedicated to preserving Theodulf's original intent and imagery, Neale carefully reworked his interpretation into rhymed lines. Neale judged the music that had accompanied all glory, laud, and honor to be unworthy of such lofty lyrics, so he matched the verses to a song that was twice their age. Ein andachtiges Gebet was penned in the 1600s by Melchior Teschner, a German pastor and composer who died during a Cossack invasion when he was just 51. Without Neale's using his tune, Teschner, a man who gave his life for his faith, would surely be all but forgotten today. But thanks to Neale, the preacher's devotion to his Lord lives on. Neither Neale nor Theodulf would have considered all glory, laud, and honor a song for the Easter season. But in the late 1800s, churches began to use the hymn during Palm Sunday services. This marriage of song and day seemed natural in relation to the way Jesus was greeted as he rode into Jerusalem. At that moment, thousands lined the streets to honor the man they hoped would be their earthly ruler. Though most in that crowd soon turned their backs on Jesus, his voice was not silenced. Today, all around the world, people who, like Theodulf and Neale, proclaim the good news still follow Christ's lessons, even when others try to silence them.